Paul. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Lang, you mentioned in your testimony that there's no real need for nation building, and yet you also say we need to take the lead on economic assistance. How does that go together? It sort of sounds like the same thing to me.
Sure, Senator, I understand the question. The piece of this that I'm talking about most deliberately and immediately is the line of effort on stabilization. And these are sort of short-term, immediate, quick-impact projects that are designed to basically get communities to start to talk to each other in the wake and provide a little bit of governance, a little bit of assistance, a little bit of employment in the immediate wake of the fighting. I mean, these are things that the military will tell you are required to sort of lock in any sort of gain that they're making on the battlefield.
So you're differentiating short-term economic assistance from long-term and saying that nation building is long-term assistance and short building is not. You know, I think that could be a distinction. It might be a definitional thing, but we've been there 10 years, so we've given quite a bit of aid. It's hard to argue that a little bit of short-term assistance is not on top of $1 trillion worth of nation building, you know, both military and non-military. We've spent a lot of money over there, which goes back to a couple of points. One point, they're not a destitute country. They have oil, and by golly, they ought to rebuild their own country. We can be of some help stabilizing things, but it isn't our responsibility to rebuild everybody's country. Look, we're out of money. We're $20 trillion in the hole. So everybody comes forward and says how great it would be if we rebuild every country. Look, I've got a bridge that's 50 years old in my state I'd like to replace. We've built and bombed so many bridges around the world, we don't have any money left over for ourselves. So we do have problems at home that we need to think about, and we need to think about how long are we going to keep doing this? A decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, 50 years, 100 years? Dr. Knights, you mentioned that there was a lot less attacks during 2007 to 2011. I'm guessing we were probably averaging, what, 50,000 troops or more? We had a bunch of people there during that period of time. The surge was basically 2000, going on 2007 still. And then when we had less people there in 2011 to 2014, the sectarian differences came forward. You know, Sunnis were pushed out of the army and out of positions, government, et cetera. I think all that's true. Which gets back to my question again, the sectarian differences have been there for 1,000 years. And we can paper over them maybe when we're there. Maybe we are of assistance in that. But you think at some point their own self-interest in saying that, you know, one of the points you made about regionalizing police and or military makes perfect sense. In the Sunni regions, you ought to have a Sunni colonel overseeing a Sunni region. In the Kurdish region, the Kurds should oversee it. In the mixed regions, maybe a more mixed force. But you'd think they would know that. And they had the disaster. I guess it just is, how long are we going to do it, and can we do it? You know, can we paper over the differences of 1,000 years, or maybe it's going to take them kind of sorting out their differences? That you know, the longer we stay, the more Americans are seen with disregard. You know, we say we don't want too many because they won't like us interfering in their stuff. Well, maybe we need to have a lot of diplomats, be of assistance, but maybe, you know, we don't need to have large troop forces in the country. I mean, look, I don't understand. There's 8,000 ISIS left. You got 500,000 in the Iraqi army, and they can't take care of 8,000 soldiers. You got 200,000 Peshmerga. You know, you got another 600,000 Turks. You know, you got armies everywhere, and you got 8,000 people, and somehow Americans have to be in the middle of it. We become a target, and we end up engendering sometimes more than we accomplish. So I would just say we ought to think through how long this is going to be. And I guess to Dr. Knights, how long do you think we have to stay? And are they not going to learn lessons about the sectarian strife that ends up bringing them down?
I think on both economic assistance and on security assistance, we've reached a place where maybe we are doing things the right way right now. So on economic assistance, we're not in there rebuilding all the bridges and building the whole power sector. We're helping them to get an IMF economic reform program. We're helping them to get bonds from the international community so they can borrow at decent rates with our bond guarantees. These things don't cost the sorts of amounts they used to when we were trying to rebuild the actual infrastructure of the country, but they help Iraq a lot. So it's a lot of bang for the buck. And No, because of the major political risks associated with being in the midst of a huge war. But also, when it comes to the security cooperation, you know, Iraqis down at local level do understand that you have to have mixed security forces that reflect the local population. But when you're interacting with federal agencies at the centre of the country, and you get down into the nitty-gritty of who ends up being the police chief in that place, that's where sometimes a little bit of US involvement can make a lot of difference in the picking of the right people to run the right places. And this only requires a couple of score people based out of this headquarters, a couple of 100 people based out of that headquarters. We're not talking about the huge numbers of people or the huge amounts of money there used to be. We've learned a new way to operate, and it's been very effective since 2015.